All right, here we are, the first ever Rusters show.
Yeah,
you've heard of Busters. This is Rusters with Russell Cook. All right, Russell.
Yeah.
How would you like to start today?
I'd like to start with my my interview of you, Hostbusters.
All right, sounds good.
Okay,
let's do it.
I would like to start the interview off by asking you, what was your biggest or the first? Okay, two questions actually. First, and then biggest comedy inspiration. Like, what first got you into comedy, and who influenced you the most?
All right. Good question. So, a lot of people might find this a funny answer because people have a lot of opinions. But the first person who, I would say, Jerry Seinfeld was the first person who got me interested in comedy. But as far as the first person who actually made me think, hey, this is something I want to do, was love him or hate him, was actually Dane Cook.
Cook,
yeah. And the reason for that was because I was I don't know, maybe 15, 16, and I saw his special called Vicious Circle. I don't know if you're familiar. And he's in a big, gigantic theater, or maybe it was a stadium, and he was it was a theater in the round, and he was standing in the middle of it with people on every single side, and he did an hour special, and it was, he had no notes or anything, and I was like, holy shit, this guy is talking to 10, 15,000 people, and he doesn't need any notes for an entire hour. He could just memorize this whole thing, and it was just the pure spectacle of it made me think, wow, this is the thing to do. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And of course, he's had his controversies with stealing jokes, and people consider him a hack because he's very animated. But nonetheless, I was just like, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So as far as who got me into it, I would say him. Also, watching Last Comic Standing, I would say that was the first thing that got me into writing jokes. And then things as far as getting me to want to do it, I listen to people like Todd Glass and other comedy podcasts kind of talk about how it's not as, it might look difficult, but it's not, it's not as hard as it may seem. And then the final person who made me think, hey, maybe this wouldn't be the hardest thing in the world was Mitch Hedberg, because I would watch him, and I would see him be nervous on stage and not look at people and look at the wall and do one-liners, and I'm thinking okay, if this guy is a respected comedian and he's kind of amateurish about this, well then you got to at least give it a try. If this guy
Did you
can do it,
ever?
anybody
Did
can
you
do it,
ever want
basically.
to do? Did you ever want to do the high energy animated Dane Cook style of stage performance when you did jokes, or were you more into the Mitch Hedberg laid back, just standing there kind of approach?
Um, I would say in the beginning, uh, more Mitch Hedberg. In fact, I would get people say, first time I ever did stand up, somebody was like, "Oh, it's fucking Mitch Hedberg up there," and I had people
Oh,
say, "Oh, you're
really?
copying." I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, this guy is trying to be Mitch Hedberg," or
That
Stephen Wright.
happens a lot. Yeah, when you play music, any sort of instrument, people are always be like, "Hey, that guy fucking thinks he's Eric Clapton. Hey, that guy's just is ripping off David Gilmour." Yeah, so that's pretty.
Yeah.
I've noticed that comedy, stand-up comedy, and wanting to be a musician, a lot of similar shit. So let me ask you
Yeah.
this: your approach to
Yeah.
comedy, are do you admire the anti-comedy movement, the people that are like Tim Heidecker and people like that, who I guess there's a bunch more
Um,
people I'm leaving out, but
that was another guy somebody said I was acting like was Tim Heidecker. Um, Tim Heidecker, Andy Kaufman, and of course I don't know that they weren't necessarily saying I was as good as those guys, but just that style. And so I'm of two minds about it. So the first and the reason I was compared to that was because I was like, sometimes you film it and sometimes you play to the people at home more so the people in the room. So I would just go on stage and like talk literally. Some people already say that my normal pace is kind of slow, maybe, but I would like
I
really
get that a lot
exaggerate it.
too. A lot of people think I am a slow person as well, so I totally empathize with you on that. But would you be
Yeah.
like playing to the crowd? Did you be like, the fucking Eagles, man? Yeah, let's do it. Like that kind of stuff, or more
I'm
like,
trying to think if yeah. Is there a second part to that question?
I just can't imagine you being like a wild, overly animated Dane Cook running back and forth style of comedian. That's
Uh,
pretty surprising that he was a big influence on you. Because
well,
you
it was
definitely
more so,
seem more like the subtle style of comedian.
yeah. Well, it wasn't even necessarily that I was like inspired to be like him performance wise. It was just the appreciation I had for a guy who could play to such a large crowd and and be able to memorize an hour worth of material. It really was amazing to me. And maybe I was kind of new to the whole idea of comedy, that you're actually like, you know, you're doing a whole hour, not really off the cuff. I would say that as far as just quickly to go back to the whole anti-comedy thing. So sometimes I would like talk extremely slow, exaggerated wise, and like just describe my whole day. Be like, this morning I got up and I ate a sandwich. And like it would piss off most of the people in the room. I was playing to those few people in the audience who got it. And sometimes people would get annoyed that you're like dicking around up there and not respecting. They were big on respecting the art of stand up,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they got to sit there every night and listen to the people like bullshitting and not being good. And I guess my mindset is like, I get why people don't like anti-comedy, because it kind of feels like that's what people do when they can't actually do comedy, so they don't even try.
Oh,
uh,
okay. So they're like they didn't learn how to do legitimate comedy first. They just went straight to the anti-comedy approach.
yeah, because it's kind of easy. It's kind of like being a painter or somebody who is like at a karaoke, and you're like, you actually suck at the art, but you're like, no, no, guys, this is actually on purpose. I'm totally trying to suck. And you actually do suck. So people can't tell the difference. But I don't know. I've liked to do both. My friend was wanting to do a friend of mine, IRL person, wanted to do stand up again, and he wanted to improvise it. And I was thinking like that might be fun, but I have a lot of prepared stuff, and I'd like at least for the first time back to try and do a good job with prepared material. I can always go up and dick around another time, but I want to, before I do it bad, I want to see if I can do it good. Like I had an English teacher.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I'd like to do both. In fact, like it actually early on, I never really did this, but I had this idea of like, what if I was the first totally improvised comic? Every single set was completely improvised, no preparation, and just try and build up this ability to do an hour without any preparation. And I think so many people talked me out of it that I never attempted it. But I still think it would be cool if somebody had the courage and willingness and could actually pull that off. Where every set is improvised.
Is there any good examples of someone just completely bombing trying to do freeform comedy?
Other than me, I'm trying to think.
You're the first. Okay. Well, you already got that going for you.
Yeah.
Does it bother you to not go over well in front of an audience? Does that bum you out? Do you ruminate about it and keep thinking of like how to do it better next time, or do you just not give a fuck if the audience is unhappy or unreceptive with your performance, or of your performance rather?
That's a good question. So open mics, I don't necessarily care too much. Everybody a lot of people do suck at open mics. One time that stuck out as particularly uncomfortable was I did this hookah lounge, and these were paying customers. So the first time I did it, it went pretty well. I had prepared material and everything. The next time I did it, I still had prepared stuff, but the thing I made a mistake about was trying things that I never tried before, basically going open mic style in front of a paid audience. And they felt like I didn't really respect it, and I did bomb. In fact, it went so bad that I kind of got pissed at the owner of the place, because he actually like told me to get off the stage early. He's like, this guy's bombing. We got to get him out of here. So I was like, shit, I got to go. And so, okay, so fine. So I bombed. But the part that really didn't feel good was after I was done, I left the place and was walking in my car. There was two guys walking together. One of the guys said, wow, man, that was no good. And I was like, fuck, man. It's one thing to not get a laugh, but it's another thing that a guy walking outside felt the need to be like, yeah, that sucked. And I didn't really have anything to say to him.
Is that the thing you think that, like, if an audience thinks you don't care and you don't have any respect for being up on stage, that's something that they'll pick up on and they will not like you for having that kind of attitude?
There's some people who can kind of pull it off, and that actually becomes why people are impressed. Like, this guy doesn't give a fuck. But yeah, I've even had comics, like a comic hosting an open mic, and he's like, have a fucking ending, man. Give it, at least make an effort. He's always make an effort. And it's like, yeah, if you're just up there and you're too cocky, you're like, man, I don't care what I say. I'm just going to say it. And it's like, yeah, they're like, okay, especially a paying crowd. They're like, we paid to be here. We're trying to actually enjoy ourselves. And this guy doesn't care at all. So I definitely learned a lesson. Like, if it's an open mic crowd, they'll give you some leeway. But if it's a paying crowd, you're not giving a shit about trying to entertain them, really bums them out. So that was definitely a lesson
about some guy just being up on a stage, and you're like, what's the thing with airline peanuts? There's only 3 in a pack. That sucks. Like, was that what you were going for? Like that, I just don't give a fuck. The deconstruction, because I was thinking the thing I like about anti-comedy, or the anti-comedy I find good, is that these people actually do know a lot about comedy, and they know what can be annoying and, like, cliche about it, and they can focus on that and make it funny by kind of
yeah.
just totally
definitely.
deconstructing it and putting it back together in an entertaining way.
I think people get more of an understanding of that if you're very clear about a character. Like, I think when Tim Heidecker does it, people get what they're kind of what's happening. And so, like, when I would do it, and it would be like if I was just talking in my own voice, people would think, oh, this guy just, and doing that, they would just think this guy sucks. Now, if I would do it like I almost had a very, I don't, Matan, Ivan, or however you say it.
Matan Evan, or is that his last name? Evan?
Matan Evanel or something. I don't know what it actually is. But he's doing a character. He's doing a voice. And I had a very similar, actually, years before I had a character. Welcome, I'm from Brandenfield, Connecticut. Jesse P.S. actually covered. Goran Lion was the name of the character. And when I did that character in that voice, it was kind of, without doing a wink and a nod to the audience, they kind of heard this ridiculous voice and they're like, oh, I get it. Like, this isn't supposed to be taken seriously, like a guy actually trying to be good. So that actually worked a lot better.
I think I have a very good question, but I don't know if it really is or not. But the amount of time, because this is like with music too, the amount of time it takes to build a faithful following that understands what you're going to be doing and will follow you and enjoy it no matter what you do. Isn't that what every comedian wants? Is a core audience that is just like, okay, he's probably going to do something weird tonight, but I like him, and he usually delivers the goods.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I would say there's some exceptions, but yeah, like I've heard, not that he's the best comic, but I've heard Bill Maher say things like that. I've heard other comics like Kumail Nanjiani say things like that. Like, comedy is actually one of those things. A lot of jobs, like, not that this is a common job, but like somebody playing in the NFL, it's always a struggle because your opponent is always getting better at the same speed you are. But as a comic, your job actually gets easier over time because you build this core audience and you build a following and you build this whole thing where people, not that you should get lazy, but even if you got a little lazy, you have this committed group of people that might laugh at like anything you say because they already signed off on the idea that you're funny. Jerry Seinfeld had that experience. Jimmy Fallon had that experience. And not a huge Jimmy Fallon fan, but he had that experience. And so, yeah, that is something that a lot of people strive for. However, I've heard Bill Burr actually say that he prefers the opposite. He doesn't like when it gets too easy, and he actually prefers to go in front of audiences that may not be inclined to like him, just so he can really, really prove that he can be funny in front of anybody. So yes, it's useful to do, but some people actually don't prefer it.
Like, you can win over an audience that normally wouldn't go for someone like you. Like, your material is so good that it's undeniably funny.
Yes, that's what Patrice O'Neill talked about. He's like, when you've really made it in stand-up, when you're basically undeniably funny, and that's more important than never.
Man. That sounds so hard, because I think about music as like, if you can write decent shit, if you've got like a decent technical ability and stuff like that. But writing jokes and having really good material, that's a lot of hard work, isn't it?
Well, comics think that musicians do the hardest thing. Musicians think that comics do the hardest thing. I don't know what's easier or harder, but they're definitely unique in their ability. And comedy is like, I would say it's both. They're just like attractiveness in people. It's like it's almost subjective, and then at a certain level of greatness, it almost becomes objective. There's some people that Dave Chappelle in his prime, people, almost everybody out there, whether they like comedy or not, would say he was basically objectively funny. Like you could just put him up there as great in front of any audience out there. I don't know if I truly believe it's objective, but yeah, if you do it at a high level, it's like really respected. Comedy, music, I have no experience making music, performing it in front of an audience. I do know that maybe the difference with comedy is it's a very, a lot of great art you can make in a vacuum. Stand-up comedy, you can write it without an audience, but you can't really know if it's good without an audience. You kind of genuinely need that external validation to know if it's any good. In fact, when you first start out, I think a common thing with a lot of people is that you start out and you know what you think is funny, so you're like, fuck, I wrote 25 things that I know are funny. And then you show up to a club and it's like they laugh at like 2 of those things, and you're like, shit, okay, maybe I actually don't have my finger on the pulse of funny. So it's a practice, repeat. Radio Foreman brought up skateboarding, and I would say,
hey, you know what? I wanted to too. I wanted to transition into what got you into skateboarding and all your influences and life as a skateboarder.
I'm trying to think. Okay, so when I was probably in like 5th grade, what actually got me into, I would say, a lot of people actually have the same answer, which maybe it's not the coolest answer, but they playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. It was there were a lot of skateboarding video games before, but that was the first thing that, like, on a video game level, actually truly paid respect to skate culture. It had the music, it had the best skaters, it told you the names of all the tricks, and it showed videos of people skating. And so that's what got me at the very beginning, got me thinking, I want to do this. Now, my dad had bought me probably years before, bought me a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles green skateboard, probably when I was like 7. And, I didn't really do a ton with it for years, but once I was in 5th grade, I got this idea in my head. I was like, what if I became one of these professional competing skateboarders, which, that didn't necessarily play out, of course, but I had that as like a dream. So I was like, every day I would just like, I remember just standing on a skateboard on my back porch, and I would just screw around with the board and try and do tricks. And then my neighbors, I don't know if I got them into it or what, but my neighbors nearby, like 3 or 4 of them, they all kind of all got into skateboarding at the same time. And we all practiced, we all skated a bit. And I remember, like, the first time learning how to ollie on a skateboard was like, whoa, this is crazy, like defying gravity. Like, you can jump and you're not attached to the board, but it follows you in the air. And I watched Master of Disguise the what people generally consider a shitty movie. And I saw a kid do an ollie up a curb, and I'm like, whoa, I could never do that. I just practiced and practiced, and finally I was able to do that. And every little bit of progression, um, it got me thinking. I was like for years I was a video game addict as a kid, and skateboarding was the first thing outside of video games that I was like, whoa, this gives me every bit of like positive reinforcement and jolt of like dopamine. I didn't think about dopamine at the time. I didn't know shit about that. But point is, like, I was like, holy shit, I'm this is like a video game, but it's real life. Like, I could like quit video games forever and just do this. Of course I didn't, but I was like, wow, this is cool. Learning how to do like pop shovets. I was all the other kids were kind of a little bit younger than me, so I was able to in general have a little bit of a competitive edge over them. So I think the fact that I was always just slightly better than every kid in my neighborhood at skateboarding, um, it propelled me to keep going further and further. And I would get like I had ramps and a grind rail uh, in my driveway, and I would just do it like all the time and obsessively. I would get skateboard magazines and all this stuff, and just
Yeah,
it became.
I wanted to ask you if you want to get real techie and tell everyone like what kind of board you like, what kind of trucks and all that shit you like. Go for it. Tech talk.
Okay, so yeah, tech talk, skate tech. So yeah, so in the beginning, it was very much like Walmart board, like Kmart boards, and so I started out with like I was saying, the first board I ever got was that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles board, and then I got something resembling more of a traditional skateboard, a Nash board, which was still like a Kmart board type of thing. And then when I was skating with the kids in the neighborhood, they would, and at my school they kind of came up with this term, or it was a common term for like shitty skateboards. They said that's just a K board. You need to ride a pro board. So I was like, shit, what is that? So we got something called the CCS magazine. I still don't know what it stands for, but it's a skateboarding like catalog for to buy skateboards. And so we were all looking at boards in there. My friend got an Illenium board. My other friend got another board. And these, a board with a whole setup is like $100 or so. Now I happen to go to a local skate park called 360 Skate Spot, and they had a skate shop in the skate park. And so the first board I ever got was now what you can get is you can get graphic skateboards. They're typically range between $50 and $70 for just the deck, the board part, no trucks, no wheels, nothing. I didn't really have a ton of money, so what I went for like $20 or $30 was something called a Powell Mini logo. Now, what that is you can get boards with graphics. They're more expensive. Mini logo, Radio Foreman knows what I'm talking about. Mini logo boards were blank boards. And if you get a pro board without a graphic, you save yourself about $20 or so. So this was like a greenish, bluish, teal kind of board with just a little thing on the bottom that says Mini logo. But it's made by Powell, like an actual company that made like Tony Hawk boards or something like that back in the day. It was a solid board.
Peralta? I remember Pal Peralta shirts being very popular. When I was in middle school in the late 80s, skating got really big, like around 1986, 1987, and everyone dressed like Tony Hawk. And the skaters were like a gang almost. If you weren't part of that gang, they did not like you. And the skaters and metalheads back then, unfortunately, did not like each other at all. So
they didn't, the metalheads, and I feel like I almost thought of them as like kind of similar, but yeah, they like really hated each other.
Yeah, because where in Midlothian, the metalheads tended to be like pretty rednecky, and the skaters were more like, cityfied or whatever you want to call it. Wasn't cool to
Right.
speak in a southern accent if you were a skater. I think you kind of
Mm.
pretended like you came from wherever Tony Hawk was from back then, that you were born in San Diego or wherever, Because
Yeah,
I
like
didn't realize
California.
it. So I was talking to you in Belland
Yeah.
years ago, and I was describing what the skaters dressed like when I was in the 6th grade, and they would have been in the 7th and 8th grade. And you guys told me that every single thing was Tony Hawk influence, the hairstyle, the clothes, the everything. So he's just been a massive influence for what, 40 some years now? Around 40
Yeah.
years?
Yeah, because he's like 60 now, and he's been pro since he was like, I don't know, his teens or so. So yeah, he's huge influence, I guess, on the haircut and everything. And there was a point where I think he was considered a dork because he was tall and lanky and wore a helmet and pads, and that was considered lame. But yeah, what he quickly became like really a big deal.
I guess one man's dork is another man's idol. How you doing, Folds? Because I just, like, from what you guys told me, every skater that I knew, that was their main inspiration and influence was Tony Hawk. Not just the techniques and stuff, but the clothing and the hairstyles and shit. The hairstyle was either called the flop or the fold, and it was real short hair on the back and sides and a big thing of bangs going up in front that would cover your whole face up to your nose. Yeah. And kind of baggy clothes, which back then weren't popular yet, like skatable clothes.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Looser shorts and pants.
One of the big, well, what years were you in high school?
Well, middle school, 6th grade was 1987 into 1988.
Okay. Yeah, when it started to become the 80s and like towards the mid 90s, one of the popular pants, besides Jinko, which became very popular, also Blind made baggy purple jeans, and that like really took over as well. Yeah, just baggy jeans were just the thing. I don't know what Tony specifically wore, but yeah, that was a huge thing in skateboarding. I think vert skating and freestyle skating were the two primary styles in the beginning. Skating pools, ramps, skating stationary in one spot, and just doing like handstands and stuff. That was the big thing. And then years later, street skating. Probably mid 90s, early 90s. That became the big thing.
Jeremy, Radio Foreman Jeremy, I think he did street skating. Have you ever seen any of those videos he made?
Yeah. So, he's a big time street skater. Shout out to Radio Foreman, member of the HB skate team, Buster skate team. I gotta give him a board or something. He skated rails, banks. It's kind of a beautiful thing the way that people skate the street, because none of it is necessarily, except for like maybe a few rogue architects putting skate stuff in the world. In general, the street is not made for skateboarding. It's just the way people adapt to it. And Radio Foreman. I've seen a lot of clips of him skating street spots, rails, ledges, what they call hubbas, which are like going downstairs. It's a ledge going downstairs. All kinds of stuff like that. When you do several tricks in a row, that's called a line of tricks. I never really did vert skating. It just wasn't something that I really did. It was very intimidating, and I just found, just in terms of watching it, street skating was always, I respect vert ramp skaters and mega ramp skaters. But for me, where it's at is street skating. I just find it way cooler to watch.
Yeah, because I remember when I was a kid, still in middle school, the dream was is that your father or uncle or someone would build a half pipe for you to skate on in your backyard, and it was just like this little curvy doodad thing that you could skate up and down on, and I guess you could make them as tall as you wanted to, but they were all made out of wood and stuff. And
Yeah,
because where I grew up, there wasn't really like a lot of streets to skate, and if there were like good skating areas, it was shopping centers, and those people always got pissed off at people skating in their parking lots and stuff. So
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've definitely like had run-ins with nothing too extreme, but you know, cops always want you. Cops, security guards, local people always want to kick you out of places. Yeah, I had one friend who had a half pipe. My dad built a quarter pipe, which is half of a half pipe. I built one in the backyard. I would skate that quite a bit. Obviously, always wanted more, wanted like bigger ramps. Mini ramps are kind of where a lot of street skaters prefer mini ramps to half pipes. A half pipe will be anywhere in the range of 8 to 12 feet. And then a mini ramp is usually anywhere between 3 and 6 feet tall.
okay.
Mini ramps, they're a little, it's just a mini half pipe. It's a little more accessible if you want to fuck around and do tricks. A half pipe is really, that's where you're getting into Tony Hawk, Bucky Lasek, as Radio Foreman mentioned. You know, you're getting into that territory. I never personally dropped in on a half pipe. The most I dropped in onto was a 6-footer, which even that was pretty at the time pretty intimidating. You gotta as opposed to rolling into ramps, which is a little more. That's a little more of an easy transition. Dropping in is a little more intimidating because you're literally putting the back of your board on the coping or the pipe at the top of the ramp. And my friend always taught me, like, dropping in on a ramp is a true lesson in commitment because there's no questioning it. Once you're ready to drop in, you've got to drop yourself at a 90-degree angle and go straight down the ramp. There's no questioning it. If you do question it, you fall backwards or you fall on your ass, you know.
Yeah, that's a question I was thinking of. Does every person that gets really into skateboarding, do you always wind up breaking something no matter how good you are at it?
I would say if you do it long enough, probably. I don't know if I'd like to ask Radio Foreman if he has. Personally, I've broken both my left and right arms. My left arm I broke when I was in middle school, dropping in what's called axle drop, which is dropping in on a 4-foot ramp, but instead of dropping in with the tail of your board, you're in a 50-50 stance. So both of your trucks, the bottom axles of your board, are sitting on the ramp, and then you turn 90 degrees to drop in. I tried doing that, broke my left arm. Then years later, as an adult, probably 20, 24, 25, maybe 27, I tried jumping down just a little staircase, just like a 3-stair. And the way I fell, trying to break my fall with my right arm, it broke. So I broke my left and right arms doing it. I would say, most skaters who've done it more than like 3 years, 4 years have probably broken one bone or another.
Was that a discouragement at all, or were you like, man, I can't wait till this heals so I can fucking skate again?
Oh yeah. So when I already remember, like, the first time I broke it, at least, soon my parents didn't want me to, but soon after that, like once I was in a big cast and then a shorter cast. Once it got in the shorter cast, I was already out skating again, while I had the cast. And it wasn't to like prove, It wasn't like, oh,
remember seeing
look at me,
people
Billy
doing that.
Badass. It was just, I was so addicted to it. I just had to get out there and skate.
Yeah, see, my middle school I went to, which was Midlothian Middle School, I remember seeing a guy doing that with just a little cast on his arm, because that, I don't know what it's like now, because now they have cops that are like, you know, security for schools all the time and shit like that. But go back like 35 or so years, when that parking lot of the middle school was empty, it was a perfect place for skating. All these hills and stuff, and it was all paved, all asphalt, and a lot of people used to go there to skate.
Oh yeah, I mean, some of the stuff, it's almost like they're almost teasing you with how perfectly it's made for skating. Like they're almost daring you to skate it. I remember at my elementary school, we had what's called, it wasn't made for this, but it's referred to as a manual pad, where you would basically do a wheelie on your board across it, like a sidewalk that goes like, I don't know, 8 feet, 10 feet, and you just do a wheelie across it. We would skate that. There was even a ledge that was at a loading dock that had a perfect, you know, normally you have to wax up concrete, but this had a perfect metal edge, like something you'd find on a skate park ledge, and we would just grind across it. And then at my middle school, we had pyramid, like it was like a ramp to go into the school, but this was resembled a pyramid ramp you'd find at a skate park, and we would skate that too. So it was like all this stuff just built into schools that was perfect for skating.
Did you ever get to skate in an empty pool?
So I never. My mother-in-law had a pool, and my brother-in-law invited me one time to go down there and skate in the pool. Now, I never got a. He was a BMXer. I skated. I never actually got a chance to skate in that pool. So the closest I ever got to skate in an empty pool was an artificial one, like at a skate park. You know, ones that are built for skateboarding. So it looked identical to a real pool with the pool coping and the kidney bowl shape, but it wasn't a genuine pool made for water. Still the same idea, but it doesn't have that cool factor of the Z Boys, you know, Dogtown guys.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but I haven't seen that yet. That documentary about them.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Mitch Hedberg actually was in the movie about them.
He was a skater?
I don't know that he was a skater, but he played a guy at the skate shop, and he was like, yeah, urethane wheels. He just had a little cameo in it. And urethane was the big change. Wheels, I think, used to be metal and clay. Once polyurethane, kind of like a rubbery, plasticky material, once that came around, that was like a revolution for skateboarding, because it could handle bumps and cracks way better.
Would the old wheels break a lot or just burn down to nothing, wear down to nothing pretty quick?
So the metal wheels didn't, but the problem, I think, was that there was no shock absorption. So it was just like really rough. And then the clay ones, I you know, is way before my time, but I think the clay ones were known to break quite a bit. So that's kind of how that was.
Urethane wheels. Okay.
Yeah,
is that
urethane.
What they still use? Is that the most popular thing to make them out of?
Yeah, I don't know if there's other materials, but for the most part, urethane is what they use to this day. And so the sizes of the wheels vary quite a bit. Smaller wheels tend to not handle the bumps as well. Larger wheels, especially East Coast skaters, are going to ride larger wheels. And also there's something called the durometer, There's numbers that kind of tell you. I think lower numbers are not as soft, and higher numbers might be softer. I forget which direction it goes in. So if you're skating rough streets, you want very soft, very large wheels, and if you're skating smooth concrete or vert ramps, you might be able to get away with harder wheels. There's also another technology. There's Ricta wheels, which are actually they're hollowed out wheels to make it a little lighter. So there's a little bit of different technology in the wheel world.
Okay. See, I don't know anything about skateboarding, so but when it comes to stuff I like the tech talk aspect. So I figured it would be a good question. So I think pretty much this is my interview. If is there anything I didn't bring up that you'd love to talk about? Because I know comedy and skateboarding are two of your favorite things.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would like to, if I could pull it off, I'd like to try and get more back into skateboarding. Trying to think as far as comedy, that's another thing I'll probably try and do soon. As far as questions about it, I don't know, you covered, kind of the basics of like starting and what it was like, as well as skateboarding as well. I will say, the friends you make in comedy can be very good. Sometimes people are a little too competitive and only care about, just like in streaming, sometimes they can be very content oriented and care more about that than friendship. But the good friends, can be very lasting friends. I have more lasting friends in the skate world than in the comedy world. That's mainly just because I have, or rather the opposite, in the comedy world than in skateboarding. I feel like just more, it seems like more of the comedy people I know are like lifelong people who just stick at it. Skateboarders, I don't know if this is like a true across the board, but a lot of them, I would say like 50 to 70% of the people that I started out skating with no longer skate. They just kind of move on to other stuff. I don't know if
That's also with playing an instrument and being in a band. As I started to get older, I noticed a lot of people just gave it up because of, they had other things in life to do. But I'm lucky I don't, so I can devote a really, psychotic amount of time to playing guitar and stuff like that. But I did want to ask one thing, because I have to say I'm addicted to coverage of the Rogan sphere now, and all the different people, the assassins, the murderers.
The murderers.
So what do you think of all that? It seems like, from what I can tell, and I'm getting pretty one-sided information watching videos on YouTube, but it seems to be like a massive backlash against certain people like Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, all those people. Do you have any strong opinions about the murderers?
Yeah. Okay. So
the Death Squad.
The Death Squad.
The comedy Death Squad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I do definitely have a lot of opinions about them. I didn't always feel. At a certain point, I was like, people are just hating on them, just to hate on them. But I've gotten to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm getting really sick of these guys. Tom Segura. The way I feel about Bert is like he's cringe and he's kind of stupid and he's silly. And if he would just calm down a little bit and just relax, I could actually grow to like him. But Tom Segura, I feel, is going just far in the direction of obnoxious and just almost like he's better than the comedy world. Like he went after he went on.
he started calling his fans the poors and stuff like that, and being kind of unfriendly and insulting to people that weren't wealthy. That's a horrible fucking move for anyone to make. Unless you're a wrestler and you want to be the bad guy.
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, this is just his shtick. But then as he talked more about like wanting to kill homeless people and like talking about, yeah, you know, if you're not making money like me, just work harder, you lazy, poor piece of shit. And it's like, okay, this ain't shtick. This is a genuine resentment for people who make up the majority of his audience. The majority of his audience is not, you know, ballers with 50 cars and living the rich lifestyle. So he's really resenting the people that made him rich.
I would say that's a horrible fucking mood. I mean, I guess you can sometimes, if you get big enough, start hating your fans to some degree, or certain types of fans if you're a mega star. But I don't think you should ever fucking like show them like I would think, especially as a comedian who's doing a podcast and a shitload of people are listening to it, maybe donating to it or subscribing to it, you shouldn't be seething with resentment towards the people that are your fans. You might have some complaints, I guess, but it just seems like a bad move to openly and outwardly despise the people that are keeping you going.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't bite the hand that feeds you like that. You know, it might work for people like Andrew Tate who aren't in comedy, who are all about being these braggadocious assholes. Like, it might actually work in his favor. But if you're a comic, yeah, you can't start doing shit like that. It's just not going to work.
Is that a thing? I was thinking about this kind of recently. You kind of turned me on like to Red Bar and all those other things, and I was like, what, the comedy, what is his name? Comedy something. He does a lot of streams about Comedy Enforcer.
Comedy Enforcement.
Yeah. So do you think that for a comedian, likability is very important, or do you think a comedian can be known as an asshole that doesn't like anyone and they can still make it?
So, yeah, this is a big debate among a lot of people, among a lot of comics.
Okay, and good. I'm glad I brought it up then.
Yeah. I'll try and articulate it the best that I can here. I do have a pretty strong opinion about this. So
how you doing, Angela?
You don't have to be likable to make people laugh necessarily. What you do need likability for is to have a career long term. Meaning, like, if, you know, people talk about cancel culture, if you're not, the fact that even regardless of what Dave Chappelle has said about trans people, etc., because he has a certain amount of likability, he's been able to stick around even when people have said, you know, fuck this guy, he's a piece of shit. If you're totally unlikable, say like a guy like Kevin Brennan, just completely unlikable.
I was watching something about Kevin Brennan and Neil Brennan not that long ago. That's pretty interesting. I need to brush up on that stuff more.
Yeah, like he's a guy who makes people laugh, but if he ever gets canceled for something, I don't think there's enough like goodwill on his side that would make him last. So if I would say, if you're gonna go the unlikable route, just plot your career fairly. I think, and sometimes likability is not. Let me be clear. Likability doesn't mean nice. You could be you could be Brian Regan and your likability is niceness. You can also be likable in the fact that you totally embrace your shittiness, but it's like 100% commitment. So like, trying to
Like how
think of
Jim
a
Norton was like 20 years ago or however long ago when he was first third mic on O&A. He seemed to embrace his dark, shitty side and made people laugh doing it.
yes, yeah, he's a good example of that, and because he fully out and out embraced that, I think that brought a feeling of likability to him, and a non-traditional likability. So in my opinion, if your definition of likability is like being a Tom Hanks great guy, no, that's not necessary. But like, you do have to have people be like, yeah, this guy's cool, you know.
I don't think I've seen it before, but in the late 80s or early 90s, he and Sally Field did a movie about a stand-up comedian teaching another person how to be a stand-up comedian called Punchline. Have you ever seen that movie?
Is that the? No, I don't think I've saw that movie. Is that the one where they have like lockers or something, and they're all hanging out at a club, and
I
they
don't
have like
remember,
their.
but I think the main premise is that Hanks is a already established stand-up comedian, and Sally Field wants to learn stand-up from him. So she kind of
Okay.
apprentices under him. But no, I've never seen it before. But you mentioning Tom Hanks is what I realized
Mm.
about stand-up. Looking back, is that Seinfeld made that huge. When I was a kid, back in the early '90s, there was all these TV shows: the Half Hour Comedy Hour, Evening at the Improv, a bunch more, and it was all just showcasing stand-up comedians. It wasn't like a television
Mm.
sitcom kind of thing. It was just stand-up mania of the early '90s. It was very popular.
And you're saying that kind of just like came out of Seinfeld being big?
And a bunch of other people, because I'm trying to think, like there was people like Kinnison was really big, Andrew Dice Clay. I know I'm probably leaving out a bunch of people, but even going back before then, when I was a younger, like in the '80s, the Rodney Dangerfield had a special that would come on showcasing young comedians and new comedians, and
Yes.
that's the first time I ever saw like Sam Kinison or Andrew Dice Clay and people like that. So there was some kind of big boom with stand up. And I guess if I go back even further, there was like Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, Richard Pryor was still doing it, George Carlin was still doing it. I know they get mentioned all the time as being massive influences, but I hope I'm not
Yeah.
leaving anyone big out. But it seems that Seinfeld, like he was kind of like the Tony Hawk of stand up for a while.
Mm.
All these other comedians would get the little mullet like he had. They dress sort of in the same clothing he wore. He was a massive influence. But I
And
noticed some comedians saying that they just like doing stand up. But after that, a lot of comedians wanted to get the TV and movie gigs, like a television series
right.
or a bunch of movies and stuff. And a lot of guys were like, well, I just like doing stand up. That was, that's my thing. Like Norm Macdonald said that he preferred doing stand up and he hated doing movies and TV shows and stuff because he didn't think he was a very good actor.
Right. So, just to be clear, are you saying that Seinfeld's big influence was before he got his show, or right when he got his show?
I think that he was pretty popular before then. And I
Okay.
believe the show would have premiered in 1989 or 1990. I can't remember exactly. But it just seemed like he had a
Yeah.
lot to do with stand up being like a higher profile thing, because he's not a
Yeah.
dirty comedian, is he? Seinfeld doesn't work blue as they used to say or anything like that. And I think that
Yeah.
of course the stuff I was watching, it would come on A&E and other channels. They couldn't play some dirty comedian cussing or anything like that. So it was all kind of like a I guess family friendly style of comedy was big. Like where you could get
Yeah.
your shit played on normal television stations without getting censored or anything like that.
Yeah, that was kind of the route back then, for even for some comics today. But the route was like you stay clean. That way you get on Carson. You don't have to change your set. You get on TV. You could just keep going with that material. And that was just like the way a lot of people did it. Yeah. I've heard Seinfeld curse occasionally, randomly during like interviews or during a set here and there, but it's definitely the majority of his work is not like that. Yeah, definitely cleaner. Yeah.
It was a little before my time, and when I was young, I liked I was way more into David Letterman because he used to come on after Cars. That's how old I am, everyone. I remember when David Letterman had the 12:30 slot after the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. But I remember several times seeing or hearing that if you did a stand-up set on Carson's show, and he invited you to come sit with him and Ed, that was like a big deal. That meant that you were going to have like a huge commercial breakthrough, like Johnny Carson endorsing you. But I honestly don't remember the comedians that he broke and got famous were already famous by the time I started watching late night television, which I think, like, my sense of humor when I was a kid, I always liked Mad Magazine and parodies and stuff like that. But I think that, like, I think I was like 13. I was really into that Letterman, that kind of bizarre, abstract sense of humor he would have, and the self-deprecating humor. Although I heard someone say that being too self-deprecating is just like too much. You got to tone it down. I guess it can be depressing for an audience if you just come up and act like you hate yourself and your whole life and shit like that. But
Yeah. Well, you got to make it funny. If you're just a guy saying, "Oh, my life sucks, I'm a piece of shit," that doesn't really work too well. So just make sure you got punchlines, I would say.
yeah, Rodney Dangerfield was good at doing the self-deprecating stuff and making it funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's one of my favorites at that style for sure. You know, I've definitely made the mistake sometimes of just being like, "Yeah, my life sucks. I got nothing going good for me." And people are like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, right. I didn't add any comedy to it. It's just straight up complaining."
I just got up and poured my heart out how miserable I've been recently to a crowd at an open mic night. Yeah, see, I think comedy's hard. I mean, I've been one of those people that can make my friends laugh and stuff, but I don't think I'd be able to consistently make people laugh and come up with shit all the time. I think that would be really hard.
Somebody, I forget who said it, said that you can make it in comedy if you don't mind the long road of it. Like one of the things that Norm was good at was just performing, whether that meant good audience reaction or bad. The point was just to do the jokes. And so if you don't, you can be great at comedy if you just can minimize the times that it bombs. If you don't mind that, if you're willing to bomb, not that this is ideal, but if when you're trying things out, if you're willing to bomb 3 to 10 times for every time you kill, if you can handle that, it's not then you can last for a long time. If you need every single open mic performance to go well, then yeah, maybe it's not for you. You know, of course, a paid gig, you want that to kill, and that's why you try the material at the open mic rather than what I did, which was go on a paid gig and try out all new stuff. You know, that doesn't work so well.
That was everyone just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Was that the one where the guy came up to you in the parking lot and told you that it was just really bad? That was a paid gig you did?
Yeah, so I wasn't getting paid. I was that's why I didn't think of it that way. But everybody had paid the venue to go in and smoke.
Okay.
So I was just kind of the background entertainment for the show. And so, but since they paid to get in, they still felt like, well, I should get some quality entertainment. So the fact that I bombed it, they were like, ugh, you suck. And they were very upset. And I was thinking, well,
that's gotta be rough.
it was rough. In hindsight, I get why they felt that way, but at the time, I was like, "Geez, what the fuck? You know, how are you this mad?" I just, you know, I didn't mean to make you upset.
I know this is old, but I saw something very recently, and I didn't know about it till recently, so it's new to me. Sorry if I'm bringing up something ancient. But the Joey Diaz versus Red Bar thing was fucking hilarious. It was like, I'm gonna get the Lucchese brothers against you. And he said something like, what you need to do to apologize to all the comedians you fucked with is give them all 20 grand. Make good. Make good. And it's like, oh, he really does think he's a mobster.
He said, "Give him 20 grand."
That was the funny thing that I didn't hear anyone mention is when he was responding to his Xanax addiction and stuff. He mentioned Red Bar and Jules. He's very mean to Jules, calling her all kinds of names. But he said the way that he could make things good, that Mike David could make things good, was like, I guess, Brendan Schaub, Tony Hinchcliffe, and a bunch of other people. Just give them 20 grand and make it good.
Wow.
That's what kind of fucking Godfather mafia shit is that? Like, if every comedian that made fun of another comedian had to pay him a shitload of money, I guess people would stop doing it.
20 grand.
But that was really funny. I don't think I've ever, because a lot of people are like, I'm not going to even mention his name. I'm not going to tell you who this guy is. But Joey Diaz, I would think that dude has been through so much that he would be really, really super thick-skinned.
Yeah, exactly. What does he give a fuck? Why does he care? It's so bizarre. Well, he kept going after him for the Xanax thing, right? He kept bringing up, "Oh, you're on Xanax. You're addicted, Joey."
And he told some really scummy story about if women wanted drugs or whatever, they'd have to suck his dick. It's just like it's really like, you don't want people knowing you're that kind of a scumbag. Because I don't think anyone's gonna be like, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
I don't think.
He said it on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe was like laughing like it's this funny story.
And he mentioned getting Xanax, a prescription for it, and a friend of his got him the Xanny bars, the bootleg or whatever you call it version of Xanax. So he I don't know why he got so mad, but I guess it was, I don't know. Do you think that it could have been a work maybe?
No, I think he was legit mad. I think that it might have compounded because
Yeah.
it's like Joe Rogan was already giving him shit for like Xanax, and then okay, now this outside guy is pointing it out and relentlessly going after, and he's going after my friend Sam, Sam whatever, the crazy Sam,
Yeah,
and all these other
that
people. Like,
fucking guy. He hired a private detective to find out where they live. That's what I heard.
yeah,
Is that he? And if anyone's a private detective, I'm not trying to disparage you guys, but they're usually
yeah,
real sleazy. A private detective, and they don't care if they give you the right house or right address or not. I mean, they just want money. They usually
yeah.
catch cheating couples so the husband or wife can sue for whatever, alimony, palimony, all that crap. But that's pretty wild. I actually heard you mentioned a couple of times watching some old Red Bar clips on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure maybe. I'm sure it was in a positive light, right?
I took it that way, and I think that
Yeah.
if you take it as a positive thing, then it is. Because that's
No, listen. Yeah.
well, do you want to talk about any of that shit that went on, or do you just want to not worry about it anymore? Because you said everything was cool. Because I remember asking you
Yeah.
last time how if that shit had resolved or not.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you remember that I posted like these host praisers segments talking positively around about Mike. Um, and I actually, at that point, that's when I decided. I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious, but that's when I decided, you know what? I don't care about the past. This stuff was so long ago. It was at this point, it's just silly to me, and I don't have any lasting grudge or anything. And he kind of responded in kind. He is not for the past. I want to say for the past 2 years or so. There's literally been no turbulence, no. I don't know if he's mentioned me at all, but if he has, it's been without no malice or anything. I think even when he covered my cop biting incident, like when he covered Kumia biting police, it was all about how Kumia is crazy. He's this biting his girlfriend. He's like, oh, Kumia is a vampire, the Count, whatever, like trashing him. When he covered mine, it was just sort of like a tongue in cheek, like he went easy enough on me that I'm like, okay, any beef that we had, any animus, that's totally done with. I look back on it with no kind of negativity at this point. I sure, if I wanted to for entertainment value, I could manufacture some grief or some anger, but all things considered, no, I really don't mind talking about it, and it doesn't it doesn't really have any negative effect anymore.
Well, that's good, because I forgot that I wanted to ask you when I was interviewing you earlier, what inspired Ghostbusters? The idea and the name and everything. What are the roots of that?
Good question. So, I think, to mention Red Bar again, I was watching a long time ago. I was watching a documentary by Porcelain. He was covering Joe Matarese.
The
And a friend
legendary
of
Joe
mine,
Matarese.
yeah, the very legendary Joe Matarese. I'm sure people, if they don't know who he is, look him up. Philadelphia-born comic who had very low-end success. Maybe at one point had some success, but so the documentary was about him, and Steve Reese, Pennsylvania local, was covered in it, and one of the people also in there covered was Red Bar, and this was my first exposure to him ever, and I was watching him, and I thought what he was doing was interesting, unique, something I never really I had seen Jocktober where they would trash other radio shows, but I never saw somebody going after comics, and I never saw it on like a visual medium. So I thought what he was doing was cool. But then what I also thought was like, this guy's kind of a hypocrite, because here he is saying that Joe Matarese is pissy and whiny and bitchy, but that's kind of Red Bar's persona. So why does he even have a problem with Joe Matarese? So I kind of like got stuck in my mind. Now, as far as creating the channel, at the time, there was a time where I was not getting along with my friend Josh Jack. And so he was posting this whole like MGTOW Red Pill channel, and I wanted to make a video to trash him. So I made a video trashing him, making fun of his whole MGTOW thing. And I created a channel. Back then it might have been called like Internet TMZ or O&A TMZ, and I was covering him, Opie and Anthony, and at one point I covered Red Bar as well. And I don't know what it was, but at a certain point I just decided to change the name of the channel to Hostbusters, a play on Ghostbusters, and I'm attacking hosts. And no real viewers at all for a while. And then I decided, like on New Year's or whatever, just to like spam the shit out of Red Bar's channel, saying like, hey, look, dude, I made a video about you. And I just kept spamming. And then eventually I got like, one day there was just an influx of like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people just all of a sudden subscribed. And I was like, whoa, this came from nowhere. And it turned out it was like people from Red Bar's BBG Bring Back group and on Facebook. And I was like, oh shit, okay, maybe this has some traction. Not that it ever got huge, but it was, for me, going from nothing to 50, I was like, holy shit. So that's when it first started. And I was just doing, these kind of react videos, which I should do more again. And then eventually, I don't know, I just started to, I saw YouTube has this live feature. Let me try that out. And there was enough Red Bar fans that showed up for me to be like, oh, okay, here's a little audience here of people. Let me do some live streams. And then somehow the Ian Ellis group discovered me, and Unbleached discovered me, all through that kind of organically. And then that's how eventually I met, you. I'm not sure what corner of the internet you showed up from, and Sam Hill as well. Of course, Jarvita from the Unbleached program. So it was just all kind of turned into this thing where we all met each other. So yeah, initially it was just to cover basically a spite channel to shit on my friend, who I now get along with. But at the time I was annoyed with him for all his woman-hating red pill stuff.
But it's a good name. I in fact, I do know your real name, but I think of you as Hostbusters. Like, you might want to legally change your name to Hostbusters. Busters. That'd be pretty cool.
I spend enough time on the internet that I almost, when I'm not around people, when I am not around family members, I start to think that's my real name. That's how silly it is. Like, oh, right, that's not me. I totally get how actors can turn into, method actors and get identified with their character, like Jim Carrey did with Andy Kaufman. It's like, oh, you're this different person, which I'm not totally different from me, but it's a little different. I'd like to know if Sam Hill is different off stage, or off camera, rather.
Well,
he's not on camera, but actually.
He kind of got upset with me because I honestly believe in my heart of hearts that Sam Hill is one of the best trolls ever.
Yeah.
I really do. And he gets mad. He says, I'm not putting any, it's not a put on. I'm being my real self and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he really knows how to make certain people really fucking mad. I mean, he was doing it.
Yeah.
He was doing it this afternoon when I tuned into his stream. He had a couple people up on the panel with him, a couple of buddies of mine, AOC and Poon, and he was pissing them off, and they were pissing him off. So,
he was. I do think you're right that he likes to wind people up, and I don't even know that. I'm wondering, maybe he doesn't so much disagree with that as much as he just doesn't like the label of troll. Like maybe he thinks he's better than that. Like he's a wind up merchant or a what do they call those? Starts with a P, like whatever Sacha Baron Cohen is. Like I don't know what the word is, but maybe he finds troll just to be too much of an internet kind of dweeby term.
And a real troll, like one that would wait under the bridge and make you pay them money. They were ugly, so maybe he thinks of like the ugliness of a troll and doesn't like that. But I think he's.
Yeah.
I honestly think that he is really good at getting some action going when it comes to streaming and stuff like that.
So you don't necessarily mean it in a bad way. You're just saying
not at all. Not at all.
Okay, but he's taking it to mean
that I think he's insincere, which it's not a question of insincerity or sincerity. I think that he just enjoys a good internet beef.
Yes. He's a sincere provocateur.
Provocateur, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he would like that term.
Yeah, because it's French. But yeah, I really don't think anything is. I wasn't saying that in a bad way, but
But that is kind of what he is.
Yeah, he's got to know that, like certain things that he'll do will have people up on his panel yelling at him and shit like that.
Well,
but
yeah, I mean,
I've known him for a long time now. I don't have any problem with him. I get along with him fine, and I hope he does Busters. I hope he and Jarva. Did we get Me Too'd by Jarva? Is that why she doesn't want to have anything to do with us?
What did she accuse us of a Me Too type situation?
I don't know if she did or not. I was asking you if we're like, because she hasn't. I know she lost her channel, unfortunately, but I don't think she or Sam have. Well, no, that's not true. Sam, not that long ago, was on a Busters, but he's probably still streaming as we speak. But yeah, I was wondering when the four of us would get back together for a traditional Busters, because this has been Rusters. This has been like my Tom Snyder interview type stream, which is part of the Busters program. If Busters was
how do you feel about it?
This would be the Ropers. I just enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed asking you questions and stuff like that. I figured that you are the one usually asking people questions. I thought it would be cool to find out more about like the stuff you like and shit like that.
Yeah, I'm liking the formula that you've got here. The questions you had pretty much brought the show through the first hour there. It was, I mean, maybe like the first 45 minutes at least, you had some questions, quite a few questions about even just covering comedy and skateboarding. I like that setup.
Yeah, I just thought it would be something I was kind of thinking about, like what I was going to ask and stuff. So a lot of the questions have kind of been in my head for a while, so it was pretty easy just to go into that.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I used to do some older streams where I would, because lately I've focused a little more on monologue, segments, and discussion. And I kind of lost, I would, sporadically kind of ask questions, but kind of, as Howard Stern says, I lost the art of the interview. I forgot about it. So like actually asking questions, actually getting to know people more is good. And sometimes I was resistant to interviews because I would ask people, I would say, hey, do you mind if I interview you? And sometimes they would say, well, hold on, what's the motivation here? Like they would almost think like, oh, are you trying to, interrogate me? Are you trying to make me look bad? Like I think, not to talk, well, I don't have to talk behind the scenes, but basically what you did was reassure me, like, not that I really had trepidation, but you made it very clear, like, this is just an interview. I'm not gotcha questioning you or anything like that.
Yeah, I have no desire to do that to anyone. Like pull back the curtain or whatever, an expose kind of thing. I'm not interested in doing that. And plus, I think it would be real shitty if I said something like, the interview is going to be blah, 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 blah. And then I start asking you all these accusatory questions about, like, why did you think it was okay to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I have definitely been, I don't know if you have, but I've definitely been on the receiving end of that kind of thing with some people who made it seem, that at first they were like, hey, it's just a nice chat we're having, or, come on up. And then it's like, why did you make Joe Booney have to wait after the show for an hour? Why did you, yell? Why did you rip up this person's set list on a comedy stage? Well, I guess that one was warranted. It was a little violent. But in general, just this hit piece, I'm like, holy shit. Not only if you're
Joe Booney is still streaming. Does Joe Booney still do his streams?
I'm not sure if he does it. I think maybe occasionally when I've gone, I have to check his channel. I'm not the biggest, most aware person when it comes to like sports streams and stuff like that. But yeah, I think he's occasionally done that. Actually, Instagram, when I've done Instagram streams at times, he's come up and always been positive.
Oh, okay.
He always says, HB, a lot of the people I hang out with, they don't like you at all, but I think you're a good guy. I'm like, all right. That's a nice way of saying I'm not liked, but at least you like me, so I'll take it positive.
Yeah, I would see that. I'd be like, okay, that's cool. They're not up here. Yeah. You are. So.
Yeah, exactly. He's always very positive. You get along with Joe Booney,
I don't know if I've ever directly talked to him or not, but I always thought he seemed to be a really nice guy.
Very positive, very nice. And he told me, like, a lot of people think my positivity is fake because I'm so damn positive, but it comes from a real place. And that seems to be the case. I don't really know any I guess like maybe one person got annoyed somebody I don't even have to mention, but let's just say the person who got argumentative with him is somebody who is known for being very argumentative. So it's more on their side than Joe's. But yeah, I would be happy to have him around. Maybe I just gotta send him a message on Instagram, and maybe we could talk to him. Are you fairly versed in the world of sports?
Not at all. I honestly do not follow them.
Okay. I'm trying to look here. I think I
it
might have.
Be good to have, like, if Joe Booney would agree to do it, to come on and do some sports talk to mix things up a bit.
Okay. Wait, did Sam Hill already invite me to his show? Oh shit!
Is he streaming still?
So
I
just realized I messaged him to come over here. I didn't realize earlier today he messaged me to go over there. I guess we could have done Rusters on his channel and just clipped it over to here. Now I don't know what to do to get him involved. Not that he has to. I mean, a Rusters is you specifically, but it's always nice to get the crew back together.
He is still live as we speak, and we have 2 people watching us, and he has 40 some. So we might want to visit with Sam. All in all, I think this went well, and I really wasn't thinking that it was going to be like, a 5 million people chat or anything like that. But Sam does have Poon and EFD on, and they're always entertaining. And yeah, maybe he'll let us come up.
All right, you want to? So would you like to? How do you want to do this? Do you want me to like clip our appearance and put it on here as part of Rusters, or just do it over there? Because you're the main man in charge here.
Well, I would say if you feel like it, just edit anything that doesn't seem important, and just Russell Cook interviews Hostbusters could be the thing.
All right.
So like any dilly-dallying or shit like that. But I think it was a pretty consistent flow of me asking you questions and you answering them and going into detail.
Oh yeah. As far as our show, I think it was solid. I'm saying when we go over to Sam's, do you want me to simulcast that over to here and call it like Rusters Part 2 or something?
He'll get mad if he'll just accuse you of stream sniping him. So
he'll say it's stream sniping. All right, yeah, I won't fuck with that.
But yeah, it looks like he's I don't have the sound on, but all the little things are blinking, so everyone's talking. Their avatars have the little gray circles moving around them and stuff, and EFD is just kind of standing up. Almost looks like he's doing a dance. So, ladies and gentlemen, Rusters Season 1, Episode 1. This is brought to you by the Busters family. This is a Busters adjacent stream. And I hopefully, in the future, we're real laid back about this kind of shit. We don't really worry about timing and stuff. A Sam interview possibly, and a Jarva interview possibly in the future. Getting to know the Busters. So thank you, host Busters.
Okay. Thank you.
And our founder, our president, our leader, Mr. Sam Hill. We're going over to enjoy Sam Hill's stream. So thank you, everybody. Take it easy.
Thank you. Take it easy.